More healthcare services are on the way to One World's South Omaha campus. For decades, One World has provided healthcare for low-income families. First Alert 6 reporter John Chapman tells us this growth comes during a time when many are worried about the future of healthcare.
One World Community Health Center broke ground to expand its South Omaha campus. The new three-story, $17 million healthcare service center will provide space for expanded behavioral health services, a child development center, and job training. One World serves thousands of people.
Today, One World cares for 53,000 individuals, children, and families from 18 counties and more than 80 zip codes.
One World Healthcare Center is expanding at a time when some fear shrinking opportunities for affordable health care.
Yeah, everything is kind of in turmoil, and healthcare, yes, from a national level, shrinking and needs across our community. We're very blessed.
Let's be clear, not a single dollar has been cut from Medicaid at all. There's just discussions about how we're going to try to extend these tax cuts.
Nebraska's 2nd District Congressman Don Bacon voted to support a budget resolution that would cut more than $1 trillion in spending. Some fear some of those cuts could come from Medicaid funding.
There is a lot of fear-mongering going on, and there's always some little elements of information out there that people could play on and exaggerate what's going on. I am committed to not cutting Medicaid. We'll just get that right out of the chute. And nobody's looking at cutting Medicare or Social Security. I do think we got to look at how we're going to save them, because they're going to go insolvent in about 10 years.
Bacon at today's groundbreaking says there is talk of making some qualification changes for Medicaid.
Now, there may be some stuff talking about workers' requirements for folks who are able-bodied adults without children. There's not been an audit of the Medicaid rolls in 5 years. We think, there's some things we could do to maybe ensure that only those who need it are getting it.
There are still many underserved people who worry about the future of their health care and how they will pay for it without Medicaid.
Well, sure, we hear that nationally, and of course, especially like Medicaid, that there'll be some reductions. How that will trickle down, we don't know yet, but I know that we have a long history and we're going to be here no matter what.
In South Omaha, I'm John Chapman, First Alert 6.
One World officials hope to hire 25 to 50 employees when the new health center is complete. The plan is to have the building ready by the end of next year.